Do I click start? Can you guys all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, we're going to get started. Are we ready? All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our first Office of Sustainability virtual live event. I'm coming at you live from my living room in New York City. Just like most of you are probably doing the same thing. That's something that we all have in common today. We're all in our houses, hopefully at least looking outside at this beautiful spring day. We're really happy to be able to have this virtual event with all of you, and welcome. So we're just going to try to have a couple of hours of good, fun, different stuff. We're going to be able to do some activities, hear about some interesting programs. We've got a guest speaker, all sorts of great things. But I just want to welcome you. For those of you I don't know, my name is Meredith McDermott. I'm the Director of Sustainability for the New York City Department of Education, our Office of Sustainability. So I just want to give, even though you can't see the team, the Office of Sustainability is all online today too. And my team, from my team to all of you, we wish you the very best and hope everybody is hanging in there. So thank you again for joining us. I'm just going to run through a quick overview of kind of what we're doing today, and then we're going to kick it over to our first presenter. So in a few minutes, we've got a very special guest that's going to do a really fun activity to kind of hype up that today is in fact the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. So I know it might seem a little strange to be celebrating Earth Day in a very different way this year, but to me, it kind of almost heightens my love of the springtime and the outdoors. So seeing things coming into bloom, seeing the sun shining for a lot longer every day, or rain, right? A lot of rain. But hearing the birds, I'm noticing these things, even being inside, just opening the windows and really paying more attention. So if this time and this tough situation that we're all in, if it gives us anything, hopefully it gives us even more appreciation for the fact that we've got this beautiful world around us. And I, for myself, can't wait to go back out and see more of it. So we've got a hands-on activity. We've got some tips for you to be sustainable at home. You're going to hear from our solar program manager about our really cool solar program and what that really looks like kind of during construction. She is an expert, so I think a lot of you ask about what does that really look like? We're going to kind of get into a little bit of that today. And then we have a very special guest speaker that we're really, really grateful to have today. Clara is from the Lamont Doherty Lab at the Earth Institute at Columbia University, and she is going to be talking to us about some things that are relevant every day, but especially today. So thank you, Clara, for joining us. We'll introduce her a little bit down the line. She's going to be speaking in just a little bit. But without further ado, I am going to introduce to you in just a second our first guest speaker. So we're going to be doing kind of shorter workshops. Each person is going to talk for a little bit of time, and then you might be wondering, will I be able to ask questions? So yes, you will be able to ask questions. We might not be able to get to every single question, but in the Q&A box, you might see a Q&A box. Above it, if you want to submit a question either during or after each presentation, if you would just do us a favor and right above the Q&A box, you'll see a little space that says your name. If you wouldn't mind, please putting your name in there. And that's just so we know where it's coming from, both during the presentations, but also afterwards. We kind of want to know how many teachers are asking questions? How many students are asking questions? From the registration today, just so you know who is out there in the audience, we've got a fantastic mix of teachers, all different grades, different subject areas. We've got students, we've got assistant principals, and a whole lot of other central office friends and partner organizations. So thank you all again for joining us. Please make sure you ask questions if you have them. Each speaker will do about 5 minutes of Q&A after each of their presentations. So that is it on the logistics end. Good stuff. All right, so Joy Rifkin, many of you out there at home might know Joy Rifkin. She's a little bit of a superstar in her own right. We're very, very proud to have Joy Rifkin on our sustainability team. Joy was a teacher. She is now a sustainability specialist in the office. She works with schools citywide to really make sustainability more of a thing at each school. So what does that mean? It means a lot of different things. And Joy has a really great way of bringing all of that stuff to life. So Joy is going to be constructing a birdhouse with reused materials, something that I think we can all enjoy right now. I know I'm going to follow along. So Joy, welcome and thank you. Have some fun, guys.
Hi, everyone. Happy Earth Day. I'm so glad you're here to do this fun and interactive project with us. As Meredith said, my name is Joy Rifkin, and I'm from the Department of Education Office of Sustainability. So today, you're going to learn how to construct a birdhouse out of recycled materials. You can either follow along with this presentation or just listen and build this birdhouse on your own time. So this activity comes from Audubon. You can find it online. There's a link in the presentation and we'll share it again at the end in case you need those step-by-step instructions. So what you're going to need today to build your very own DIY birdhouse is a milk carton or a juice carton. Today I'm using a half-gallon carton, but any size will work. You're also going to need some kind of string or ribbon. You can really use anything you can find in the house. I'm going to use wire today, but you can use like shoelaces or string from a wrapping present, anything you can find that can hold this birdhouse up. You're going to need a pair of scissors, a pen, or some kind of object with a pointy tip. And then you're going to need some art supplies. So these can be cool things that you find in your home, like an old magazine that you want to cut up and decorate your birdhouse with. Here, I found this old road atlas, so I can use old maps on my birdhouse. It's really fun to go through your stuff and see what do I have that I can use to decorate my birdhouse with. You can see on this project that I made earlier, I have the map of New York City on there. Pretty fun. I also found an old calendar from 2019. This is another great place where you can find some cool art to decorate your birdhouse. You can also use acrylic paint. Not all of us have paint at home, so today I'm going to be using paper, but this is a great option if you feel like painting your birdhouse. I also grabbed some materials from nature. I went outside and found some dried leaves, an acorn. I had a shell collection. Anything you can find outside and in your home that you want to use to decorate this birdhouse. Finally, you need some sort of glue. You can use liquid glue, a hot glue gun, or a glue stick. I'm going to be using a glue stick today. If you want to, you can add some bird seed to your birdhouse to attract the birds to come in and take shelter and have a nice snack. I just used sunflower seeds and some almonds and peanuts. Okay, let's get started on this project. So the first thing you're going to do is cut a hole so your bird can find shelter in your birdhouse. Now this is a part where you might want to ask for some assistance from a family member or an adult, maybe an older sibling, because you're going to be cutting into your carton. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your sharp pointy object, I'm using a pen, and you're going to pop a hole right in the center of this carton. That's going to be where I can insert my scissors and make an easier cut around the outside. The next trick is that I want you to draw a circle around where you poked that hole to give you kind of guidelines for where you're going to cut. See that circle right around the hole that I popped? Now we don't want this hole to be too big. We want this to be a sanctuary for birds, not a house for squirrels or any other pests in New York City. So once you've popped your hole in there, you're going to take your scissors, again, maybe with the help of an adult, a family member, or an older sibling, and you're going to insert the scissors into the hole that you popped and cut around the guidelines. Now this doesn't have to be a perfect circle, but you can see I've got a nice little oval there that's not too big, and that will be the perfect little entrance for our bird friend. The next thing we're going to do is decorate our half-gallon carton. So I decided for this one, I was going to use some old pages from my calendar. I pre-cut these pages, and I'm going to glue them onto my milk carton now. So I'm using a glue stick, but again, liquid glue or a hot glue gun will also work. You're going to apply a nice thick layer of glue to the side of your milk carton. And then you're going to slowly lay down your picture and nicely press it in. And I'm going to show you how you're going to be able to coat this outside so it lasts a little bit longer. You can see I pushed that nicely in with the glue stick. All right, we're going to do the other side. Did you know that there are over 10,000 bird species in the world? I had no idea, but I learned so much from digging around the Audubon's website. I'm really excited to see what type of birds land and go into this house. Okay, so I'm putting on my second sheet of paper to decorate. And I'm pressing it on nicely to the carton so it stays for a long time. Now you can see I have 3 sides of my carton decorated. I'm now going to be putting my piece of paper, the old calendar, on the front of my carton where the entrance is. So I'm going to tell you a little trick about how we can do that. So I decided to use this picture on the front, and I know it's going to go right here. I need to make sure I still have that hole so the bird can get inside. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold this piece of paper in half the long way, like a hot dog. And I'm going to look right here and make a little mark where the hole starts and where it ends. Right on that line. So I made 2 dots. I'm going to refold my piece of paper, and then I'm going to cut from one dot to the next. Now again, this doesn't have to be perfect, but you can see that it lines up nicely with the entrance that I made for my birds. Glue this down. Did you guys know that the largest bird in the world is an ostrich? We won't find any ostriches in New York, but they wouldn't even be able to fit in this house if we could. Ostriches can't fly. I know a couple other types of birds that can't fly, like an emu, a penguin, a kiwi bird. I'm sure there are other birds that can't fly, and I'm gonna have to research that when I'm done with this. Okay, awesome. Now I've decorated all 4 sides of my birdhouse. I'm ready for the top. So the top is the same sort of thing. I cut out a piece of paper from my calendar, the correct size, and I'm going to glue it right on here. Awesome. Now this isn't the only project that Audubon has on their website. There are so many. There's even a project for making a pollinator hotel on your balcony or backyard. That one's really cool. So my milk carton has a little cap and spigot for pouring out milk. Yours may or may not have that, but I cut my paper to make sure that it was going around that portion. Glue this on. Now, if you're building this with me right now, I had my paper pre-cut. So if it's taking you a little bit longer, no problem. We're just going through all the steps so you can see what the finished product looks like. If you need any help, you can email me during this webinar or after, and I can guide you and help you figure things out if you're getting a little bit confused. Also, be creative. Show me some other great ways that you can decorate your carton. Okay, awesome. So my carton is decorated. We've got the paper on here, and I'm going to show you a way that you can make this a little bit more protected with a plasticky coating over the paper. Now, this is a trick I learned from my art teacher. All you need is a little glass of water and a paintbrush, and you're going to paint the top of the glue stick to get kind of a wet, slick mixture. Now, this acts like kind of like plaster of Paris. You paint it over your paper and it dries and protects it. If you don't have a paintbrush, you can even just dip your glue stick in a little bit of water and rub it directly on your project. You can also use liquid glue and mix that with water and put it right on there.
Hey, Joy.
So once this dries,
2-minute warning.
Okay, great.
Joy. Yeah, thanks.
Once this dries, it'll give you a nice plasticky coating. Okay, so I want to get to the fun stuff. Now, if you have a hot glue gun, you can really go wild. You can glue on these shells, you can make little shingles out of a twig. The world is your oyster. Since I don't have a hot glue gun, I'm going to add my little perch with a twig that I found in my backyard. So what I'm going to do for that is, again, make a little punch hole with my pen, and you might need an adult to help you with this. Did you hear that pop? And then I'm going to push my twig inside there. You might need to use your scissors just to get that hole a touch bigger. There you go. So adding in that perch is great because the bird is able to land and look inside. They want to make sure that they're safe if they're going to go into your birdhouse. The final step is to decorate and then add wire or string to hold it up on a tree. What you do for that is just punch a hole in the side of the carton and the other side, and then loop that wire through or string through so you can hang your birdhouse from a branch. If you have some bird seed, you can add it in your birdhouse and then watch to see who comes and visits. Again, if you have any questions about this project, ask them now in the chat and I'll answer, or you can send me an email and I'll help you out. I hope you have a wonderful Earth Day. I'm so lucky to be here talking to you in your apartments and your homes, and I hope you're staying safe and healthy. Thanks, you guys.
All right, Joy, I've got a few questions that came in.
Awesome.
People are asking if it's okay to use thread.
It's totally okay to use thread. As long as it's strong enough to hold your carton, that's all that matters. And these are pretty light, so I think thread would be fine. I've even heard of people using dental floss. It's pretty strong. You might be able to find it in your house, and then you can hang your birdhouse outside with that. Any other questions?
Yeah, a few people asked, what if you don't have some of these materials at home?
You can do this with whatever you have at home, however you want to decorate this birdhouse. The original project called for acrylic paint, but not everybody has that, so I decided to use old magazines and calendars. You could even cover this with homework you've turned in or loose leaf paper that you found in your house and draw on it. I would love to see your creations. If you do this differently than I did, please send a picture to my email. We'd love to see them.
Joy, what about the rain? Will these be destroyed in the rain? And is it a good idea to punch holes in the bottom to let rain out the bottom?
Those are great questions. So definitely over time, the rain might damage this carton. This one was left out during the rain and I was surprised how well it held up. One reason for that is if you hang it on a tree, the overhang of the tree blocks a lot of the strong raindrops. So it still got wet, but it wasn't getting soaked because it was protected by the tree branches. But you might want to bring it inside if it's a really strong rainstorm. I didn't think of poking holes in the bottom for drainage, but that's not a bad idea. Some water might get in the front here. Luckily, the top should be pretty secure, but you might want to poke one hole in the bottom for drainage. Great idea.
Joy, where would you recommend putting these in apartment buildings? Someone is asking, is it okay to put it on a fire escape?
Yeah, I think this would be really neat to put on a fire escape. If that is your outside access, this is a great way to attract birds and give them a safe place to hang out. So if you can hang this from your fire escape or set it on a windowsill, that's awesome. If you can get it to a tree branch, wonderful. Please, please, please share where you hang these things in your home.
Joy, can somebody mix glue with water to cover the birdhouse?
Absolutely. That is like the greatest trick that I've learned. If you mix liquid glue and water or the glue stick with a little bit of water, it makes that plasticky coating that you can paint onto your birdhouse. That protects it for longer. You could also do plaster of Paris, that covering. That takes a lot more work, and I find that the glue and water works pretty well.
And one last question, where would you recommend getting bird food and what type?
That's a great question. You can actually at a grocery store just get sunflower seeds, the ones that are not flavored or salted, and that will work. You can also get them at a garden store or right now online. My mom would probably have some really good advice about what bird seed attracts what birds. But I also know that Audubon has that on their website. They have a specific part that says, use this seed and attract this bird. I would love to know. I know like sunflower seeds attract most bird species, but I'd love to know what you use to attract a bird into your house. Thank you, everyone. Happy Earth Day. Thank you so much for being here today, and I can't wait to see your projects.
All right, thank you, Joy. That was incredible. We really appreciate it. Again, Joy Ripken at schools.nyc.gov. If you've got any other questions, Also want to give a shout out to New York Audubon for being such a great partner. Also having really great resources and materials for schools, students, teachers, and they've got a lot of things that are able to be done even while you're at home, just like Joy demonstrated. So thank you, Audubon, and thank you, Joy. Next up, we have got the voice that you just heard came from our pal Pat Keys. Pat is our coordinator of special projects in the Office of Sustainability. And Pat is going to be walking you through some cool tips to do sustainability from your house in the next 15 minutes. So take it away, Pat.
All right, thanks, Meredith. So a little bit about me before we get started. Sustainability was a big part of my childhood. I'm one of 7 kids, so it was always a big part of my life. A lot of the techniques I'm going to share today, my parents enforced when I was a kid, mainly for financial reasons, which I think is a great way to get buy-in to sustainability. It's especially topical now because we're at home and some of us may be looking to save money on energy, etc. So I'm going to go through some tips on that. I have a bunch of hashtags throughout this presentation that I'm going to use. We're really encouraging people to post on social media. Using hashtags is a great way to find people who are interested in similar things to you and a good way to join the conversation. All right, I'm ready for the next slide, which is about energy reduction. So first tip I'm going to share is about using natural daylight. I'm in this next photo looking really cool. I promise there's not going to be a photo of me in every single slide in this presentation. One thing you can do as well, I know it's just kind of weird in between phase right now where it's hot one day, cold the next. Instead of turning on the heat and the AC, you can layer up when it's cold. In my photo, I've got a little blankie on here. If it's hot, you can crack the window. Next suggestion is pretty basic. Turn off the lights when not in use. It's something I forget a lot, so just keep that in mind. Keep the fridge closed. I see you getting a snack every 5 minutes. I'm doing the same thing. But when you're going to the fridge, have something in mind before you get there. When you stand there in front of an open fridge, kind of looking around, it takes a lot of energy for the fridge to cool down again after that. Use power strips and unplug your devices when they're not in use. When you have like your phone charger plugged in, for example, but your phone's not connected to it, if it's still on the outlet, it's using what's called vampire power. It sounds scary, and it is scary because it'll increase your energy bill. And if you're really interested in energy, stay tuned after my presentation. My colleague Christine is going to be talking about solar energy in New York City schools. All right, we're going to be talking a couple chores during this presentation, the first of which is laundry. Great way you can save energy is by doing a cold water wash. It can save between 75 to 90% power compared to hot wash. When you're done, you can hang dry your items. If you don't have a drying rack like the one I have in my photo here, you can use counters, you can use furniture, doorknobs, clothing hangers. And you can reuse your body towel. So the towel you use to take a shower or a bath. I use mine about a week before I wash it, but I read in a couple places online, you should really only do it 3 to 4 times because bacteria can start to grow. Also, when you're drying your towel, be sure that it's fully spread and not crumpled up somewhere. If it's wet and crumpled up, it can really grow bacteria. The next tip is about, a lot of us are Con Ed. We receive Con Ed for our electricity. If you do, they have a great tool called an energy report. So see if you can sign up. Not every building is eligible, but it's a great way to compare your energy year to year, month to month, see different trends about the way you use energy, and see how you compare to similar homes. If you're not a Con Ed customer, see if your provider, maybe National Grid, has some sort of equivalent program. Next topic is kind of a hybrid of water and energy. So I'm going to talk about Navy shower. This is something my dad enforced growing up to save money and water. It's how it works is you rinse your body off, then you turn the water off and you lather up, so get nice and soapy, and then you turn the water back on to rinse off. It can save a ton of water. Another good tool if you have a dishwasher is to make sure you're filling it up before you run it. And then if instead of hitting a drying setting on your washing machine, right when the dishwasher finishes, open it immediately afterwards, and it releases a lot of the steam and it air dries really quickly, but you have to do it right after the wash finishes. If you're using a sink, kind of similar to the Navy shower, so get your dish wet, scrub it with a brush, and then rinse it. Turn off the water, scrub it with a brush, and then turn the water back on to rinse it. I'm going to talk about a couple different things with food. Food waste, it's a huge problem in the US. About 30 to 40% of all the food in the US is wasted each year. So a couple things you could do, make a list before you go to the grocery store and really stick with those items. Sometimes things can get stuck in the back of our fridge. So what this photo in this slide is try to rotate items in your fridge. If you have stuff that's stuck in the back, pull it forward. You want to try to get rid of things that are expiring soon. You can designate 1 or 2 nights a week for clean out the fridge nights. So you take whatever you have in the fridge and try to make a meal out of it. And you can find more tips at stopfoodwaste.org. Okay, composting. So this is when you take food scraps and save them. So when your food scraps end up in your regular garbage, it creates greenhouse gases, which are really harmful to the environment. Unfortunately, curbside collection of compost, a lot of buildings have access to this. It's going to be ending on May 4th. So I really wanted to focus this slide on more about what you can do with food scraps. So one idea is you can create a worm bin. If you've never seen our resource portal, you can check it out. It has a lot of great different ideas. It's more geared towards school, but you can adapt a lot of them for your home. So for example, I mentioned the worm bin here. You can find the link to that resource. You can also just try to get creative. So you could make a broth out of vegetable scraps. Some items you can make face masks with. There's tons of ideas online, and again, stopfoodwaste.org is a great place to get started. So the last second to last food slide is about eating habits. So this is a personal growth area for me. Livestock farming causes about 15 to 18% of human-produced greenhouse gas emissions each year, which are really harmful to the environment. So what you can try to do is reduce your meat and cheese intake, and you can supplement with some of the foods, protein-heavy foods I have here in this photo. One good way to get started on this is Meatless Mondays. So you take 1 day a week and you pick that as your day where you're not going to eat any meat. So during this quarantine time, I know a lot of people are supporting local restaurants, so you may be using different apps to buy food. If you do, just be mindful, most of them have a box that says something along the lines like, please no utensils. They sometimes miss that. So what I suggest you do is in the actual notes section, when you're ordering each item, double up on that and write in no utensils, no napkins, no side sauces, etc. And then when you're done with your meal, it can be tempting to throw stuff right in the garbage, any plastic that it came in, but just take a minute to give your containers a scrub and put them in the recycling. Next tip is about cutting back on single-use items. So first idea is to use rags instead of paper towels or napkins. So I have my Red Sox towel in this post. Go Sox, even though the season hasn't begun yet, it's postponed. Avoid single-use water bottles. Try to skip using straws unless you need them. Instead of using plastic wrap or foil to cover your food, you could try using an old peanut butter container or an old sauce bottle. And if you're a big tea or coffee drinker, instead of using little pods and boxed tea, which can have a lot of wrapping on it, try switching to regular coffee grinds or loose leaf tea. We're probably doing a lot of reading, some of you, while we're in quarantine. So there's some different tools. I'm not going to list each one. I'm just going to show you, pull them up on the screen here. But the first one I am going to mention, it's the New York Public Library, because they have over 300,000 ebooks and e-audiobooks. And there's a few other resources here that also have free items. Plants. So plants are a great way to relieve stress, clean the air inside your apartment. One thing you can do, because you might not be able to just go out and buy a plant right now, if you have a plant in your house, you can propagate it, which means you take a snip of it and you create a new plant out of it. So in this photo that I shared, for example, we have a spider plant on the left. That's actually a cutting I took from the office. And on the right is a pothos plant. Both of those are really easy. They grow like wild. So another option is to try to create an indoor garden, a hydroponics or aquaponics garden. So again, on our resource portal, I have a link here to some ways you can start a hydroponics or aquaponics. All right, back to cleaning, everybody's favorite topic. So great way to clean things around the apartment is using baking soda, vinegar, and water. Remember that nasty towel that I mentioned earlier, my week-long towel? Sometimes gets musty, and my gym clothes do too. You can get rid of the smell by doing a baking soda and vinegar wash. It's a lot less harmful than using detergent. And another consideration is if you're doing spring cleaning right now, I know a lot of us are, don't just throw things away, though you can't donate them right now. Save them for a little bit, and you'll be able to donate them after the quarantine, because a lot of people could use those. This next one is really personal to me. I consider this the most important. It's currently Fashion Revolution Week, which came out of the Rana Plaza factory collapse, which was a clothing factory in Bangladesh that collapsed in 2013. The 7-year anniversary is actually this Friday. So why this is serious, because a lot of clothing, it's called fast fashion, is made really quickly out of cheap materials and then quickly thrown away. It falls apart quickly. So before you're buying things, it's really important if you consider if you really need an item. And if you do need an item, see if you can find a higher quality thing that's going to last longer. Another good tool for just being mindful about who made your clothes and the working conditions people are working in and the environmental effects of clothing production is when you're getting dressed in the morning, just think about as you're putting something on, where did this come from? Who made it? You can also email companies about their sustainable practices. And this is probably the worst photo in the presentation, but learn some basic sewing skills. This is a pair of socks. When I have some holes in my socks, usually in the toes, I try to just stitch it up. So see if you can learn some skills, basic sewing skills. Quarantine birthdays, I feel for you. Anybody who's having a birthday right now, just a reminder to try to reuse as much as you can. Decorations, wrapping paper, boxes, you can even reuse candles. But try to avoid, also a reminder to avoid using single-use items. So like paper plates, solo cups, plastic straws. Instead, use glass plates if you have them.
Hey, Pat, giving you a 2-minute heads up.
Great, thank you. So the next suggestion is to, as you're getting rid of things in the house, just think about how can I reuse this item? So I have a couple examples here. I used to get laundry service in my old apartment, and they would bring items in a trash bag. Essentially, they wrap your clothes up in a bag. So you could reuse that bag as a regular garbage bag. We have in the Office of Sustainability this canned plants photos. You can use cans as bases. This next photo is my attempt at making a mask. I used an old t-shirt to make it. It looks like I'm going to rob a train or something, but it gets the job done. If you just missed Joy's birdhouse presentation, check it out. We're going to send a recording after this so you can view how she reused some materials to make a birdhouse. And again, the internet's your best friend in finding stuff. I wanted to take a minute to plug my mom is really crafty, so I just wanted to throw up a couple ideas here. She reuses tons of stuff, Kleenex boxes, old light bulbs, pieces of paper, envelopes to make all these cool crafts. So again, find stuff online. And then that, if we could skip to the very last, join the convo rather. So these are a couple things I just want to remind you, be part of the conversation. So if you're active on Twitter or Instagram, look for like-minded companies and people. Use some of the hashtags that I shared today. You can explore different newsletters, including ours. Our office sends one. The Earth Day Initiative. So this, look up climate action change. It's steps you can make to, you're kind of agreeing to make a commitment during Earth Day. So look that up online. Documentaries, a lot of us are binge watching stuff right now. The Environmental Film Festival has a lot, they're streaming all of their films right now online for free. Write to a legislator. And then stay tuned for our final presentation of the day. Our Youth Leadership Council is going to be talking about things they do to get involved. So thank you. I'm ready to open it up for questions. I do want to just note a couple things. If you have questions about my presentation, you can email me directly. If you have an idea, if you're doing something cool and you want to share it, you can email our sustainability email, and be sure to follow us on Instagram.
Thanks, Pat. So many great suggestions on there. We have a bunch of questions that have come through. A lot of things in relation to food waste. One question here from Mia: if the food is expired, can we still use it, or will it be harmful?
So if you're using it to make food or, you know, like a mask, like I suggested, I would not suggest using it. If it's bad, you don't want to use it as a vegetable stock or something like that.
And on that note, someone wants to know if broccoli can go in the compost.
Sure can.
We have a bunch of questions coming in about curbside collection and organics not being collected on May 4th. Just to address that, some questions are coming in asking about if general garbage is still going to be picked up. It's only organics collection that's the issue there. Pat, I don't know if you have anything to add.
Yeah, yep, your garbage will still be picked up. Don't worry.
We have a question about taking a shower, asking if it uses more energy when you change the temperature or if you just keep it at one temperature. Kind of a tricky question. Any thoughts?
Yeah, you know, I don't know, but the hotter the water you turn it, the more energy it uses.
Awesome. Someone wants to know how they can recycle a plant again.
Oh, so I think they mean propagation, so creating a new plant out of an old one?
Yeah, so I'm guessing to answer that would be probably that you can compost the plant itself, or if you're letting the plant continue to grow and go to seed, that you can save the seeds and then replant it again.
Yep, those are great suggestions.
Someone is asking about making a worm box. I don't think you went into that in this presentation, but I do know that there are a lot of online resources for that. So feel free to reach out via email and we can help provide you with some of those.
Yeah, and I did point people during the presentation to, on our resource portal, we have directions on creating a worm bin. If you didn't see that link, we're going to be sharing this presentation out and the PowerPoint slides by the end of the week.
Can expired stuff go in the compost?
Sure. Yep.
Any suggestions for reusing plastic bags?
Yes. So some grocery stores they may not let you right now because of the COVID-19 situation, but I still use my grocery store lets me. So I reuse produce bags and regular trash bags. Yeah. Any other questions?
I think that's all of them.
All right. Well, if you do have other questions, I had my email up before, and again, we're going to be sharing this out a little later this week.
Great.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everybody.
Pat. Thanks, Pat. That was great. And those are things that are meant to really be done by anyone. So thank you, Pat, for putting that together. Also, a big thanks to Pat for helping to put this whole thing together. Like I said, this is our first time doing this, and he's been a really big help. So thank you, Pat. Next up, we have got we like to lovingly refer to as our solar powerhouse. Christine Johnson is going to be walking you through kind of a day in the life of what it means to do solar and to have solar on our school building. So thank you, Christine.
All right. Well, I want to thank all of you for taking the time to celebrate this amazing planet with us today. And I'm super excited to share a visual overview of what installing solar on our school rooftop looks like. So as Meredith said, I'm Christine Johnson. I'm the solar program manager within the DOE Office of Sustainability. I joined the Office of Sustainability about 3 years ago to lead this program. And in that time, we've grown it to a program size of working on nearly 200 school projects simultaneously. So that's a really significant number of projects that we're working on. We already have 46 schools with solar installed, and we currently have 10 of those under construction at this point in time. So that's incredibly exciting, and one of the main reasons we wanted to share an overview of what construction of solar looks like on schools. So the first part of solar is to identify a solar ready site. So a good site for solar. And we do that by following the solar readiness parameters that the city established when they committed to installing solar on city-owned buildings. So the first check in the process is we're looking for large buildings with open rooftops. And as you can see from the example site on the right-hand side of the screen, this is a very large school with a nice open rooftop. So the second piece in the checking of the checking in the steps is making sure that that building is in good structural condition. And we run very specific analysis to make sure that the school is in good structural condition and it can hold the weight of the new solar installation. So that's a big step in the process. And the third step, and typically the defining step in the process, is making sure that the school has a new roof on it. So we need roof systems that were replaced in the last 10 years. And this roof example to the right-hand side with that nice bright finish, that tells us that this is a new roof. And in fact, with research, we know that this roof is under 5 years old. So we know that this roof is a great candidate for solar. Next. So we've got a good site here. So the next part of the process is to actually work with the design and engineering team to develop the layout for the solar panels on the school rooftop. So it's critical to study the building and do a layout that maximizes the number of solar panels that we can install. So in the design that you see on the screen, all of those little boxes you see represent the intended installation of solar panels. So we're ultimately looking at 1,324 solar panels on this rooftop, which is a wonderful number of solar panels and a very large installation that will have a major impact on the energy we use in that school. So another piece during design that we do is that we run shading analysis. So we make sure that we put the solar panels in spots that they won't be in the shade, because we need our solar panels in the sun. So ultimately, as a whole, we develop what's called a set of construction drawings. Next, please. So those construction drawings are submitted to the New York City Department of Buildings, where a team of design professionals reviews those drawings to confirm that they're compliant with all of the applicable codes in the city. And these codes are in place to keep us safe. So they review our design against those codes to make sure that it's safe and that we are approved to move into construction, and they issue what's called a work permit. Next. So we got the green light on this one, so we'll move into construction. Next, please. So in order to start the process of construction, we need to ensure that materials are delivered to the school. So there are a lot of materials that need to arrive at the school site in order to build a solar project. And these materials are typically delivered in these large freight trucks, which you see in the photo. And in this image, they are unloading the solar panels. And in order to do this, we typically work with the local police department to do a partial street closure so we have nice clearance to unload these materials. Next, please. So once we have the materials delivered to the site, we redistribute them to designated areas around the building. And I just want to point out that the work that I'm overviewing here, this work is done on the weekends when there are no students or teachers present in the building. So we have a lot of operating machinery and we do this on the weekend. So we redistribute the materials, next, to very specific locations. So the green X that you see on the screen is where those materials were being distributed to. And so they're strategically placed in what's called a loading zone. So from there, we will use a crane to lift the material up to the rooftop and set it down in those highlighted yellow areas up on the roof. So the crane is the big piece of equipment that is going to help us out with that. So the specific crane that we use in these projects is called a city crane. And the reason we use a city crane is because it's a very compact crane that can get into tight spaces. And it has a 100-foot reach, which we need in order to get to our rooftops. Next. So ultimately, we will be lifting materials up from the ground level to the top of the building. So as you can see, we're inside that courtyard area that we saw in the plan marked with the X, and we'll be lifting the material up and over the roof. Next. So as the crane arm extends over the roof, next please, it's critical that we avoid contact with the school building itself. So that wall off to the right-hand side, designated with that green arrow, is called a parapet wall. So it's very strategic that we have to lift up and over that parapet wall. Next. So ultimately, once the materials are lifted up and over that wall using the arm, the crane operator who is on the ground is actually unable to see the material, like that load of material that is being set down there. So the gentleman circled in the green is in constant radio contact with the crane operator on the ground. So he becomes the eyes and the ears of the crane operator. Next. So here I would like to show you a video of what the materials look like when they're being set down. So as you can see, the workers guide the material down onto the pallet, and then they release the straps that held that material when lifting it to the roof. Once the straps are clear, the radio operator communicates to the crane operator, and the crane arm is able to be swung back out to go pick up another set of material. And the team on the roof uses this dolly, this bubble wheel dolly, to quickly pick up the material and redistribute it to other areas of the roof so that it clears that area for the next load of material coming up to the roof. Next, please. So ultimately, they redistribute the weight of that material all over the roof. And as you can see, it's spread out nicely so that we don't put excessive stress on the structure in one area of the roof. Next, please. Each of those piles of material are set down on the roof membrane very strategically. So we have styrofoam there as a protective barrier because, as I mentioned earlier, these are new roofs. These are new roof systems, and we really, really want to protect them. So a lot of care is taken in order to protect those so that we don't cause any holes or leaking in the roof because we want to keep our schools in really good condition. Next. So the first part of the assembly process is what's called assembling the racking system. And there's a variety of racking systems out there, but the example we have here is called an eco footprint. So these little feet rest on the roof membrane and they become the structural support that holds the solar panels. So they sit on the roof membrane on top of what's called a slip sheet, which is an additional protective layer, and then they support the solar panels without doing any penetrations to the roof membrane. So they simply sit on the roof. Next, please. So then we start the process of actually installing the solar panels on the racking system. So the little feet, as I described earlier, become the 4 points of contact that hold the solar panels in place. So we start to install the solar panels very carefully and strategically so that they're put in really good position. Next. The next part of the process is to do wire management. So in the prior slide, you saw that we installed the solar panels on a slight angle. So once we install the solar panels, the wiring on the underside will actually, if not properly held in place by wire clips, will hang down onto the roof. And we don't want that to happen, so we clip them in place and we do really good wire management because these systems need to last upwards of 20 years. So typically these installations will last 25 plus years. Next. And we wanted to share that last summer, we had the unique privilege of having student interns work with our installers to install solar on our school rooftops. And we had 4 students join Solar Energy Systems, the team that we were working with, for a 6-week paid summer internship. So they were out on the rooftops alongside our installers, completing this installation, and they actually had the privilege of working on 4 different school solar installations. Next. So one piece of the process that the student interns worked on, and they worked on a variety of projects, is redistributing the concrete blocks, which will become the ballast block that actually holds the solar panels in place. So they redistribute those blocks along the solar panels. Next, please. So simultaneous with redistributing those blocks, another team is installing these metal trays between the solar panel, which are our ballast trays, which will ultimately become the home for the solar panels. Next. For the ballast block, sorry, not the solar panels. The solar panels are already in place. So as you can see, the solar panels are installed in rows and there's a gap between those rows, which is where that metal tray will go. And ultimately, within those metal trays, we will place the ballast block. Next, please. So here's an example of those metal trays in place. And as you can see, those metal trays attach to the solar panels and become a part of that entire system. So it's all interconnected. So these concrete blocks are actually weighing down the solar panels. Next. Here we can see more of those concrete blocks installed, and the way we determine how many of these concrete blocks to install is we run structural calculations and wind load calculations. So the windier or the bigger concern for storms, the more concrete blocks that we have to put in place. And we design for the worst case scenario because it's really important to us and to everyone, for everyone's safety, to keep these solar panels in place on the school rooftop. Next. The next part of the process is installing the wire trays, which are these white rectangular boxes that you see that run alongside the solar panels. Next. So ultimately, we have to do a lot of wire distribution because our goal is to interconnect all 1,324 of these solar panels. So they're installed in rows, which we saw earlier. Next. And we have to distribute these wires along each side. Next, please. In order to capture the power coming out of each row of solar panels. So we have to do a lot of wire distribution up on the roof and then ultimately interconnect it into the solar panels. Next. So at the end of the wire distribution process, we actually neatly collect all of that wiring in that wire tray that I described at the beginning. So the white rectangular trays, as you can see, it's neatly collected there. And as an ultimate finished product, there will be a nice cap put on top of this to protect all of those wires. Next. And from there, all of those wires collect into these silver conduits. Next. And they run to our inverters, which are these white boxes on the wall. Next, please. So here we are working with our electricians. This is a video, Thad, if you could play it. So we work with our electricians to install the inverters. And so the way we receive energy from the sun is in direct current. But we need to convert that into alternating current, which is the type of energy that we use in our school buildings. And ultimately, these boxes are the units that convert our direct current into alternating current. Next. And then coming out of those inverters, we combine all of that alternating current energy, which is now in the usable form that we can use in our building. And we send it through these large conduits across the rooftop. Next. And next, up and over the parapet. So the parapet was that wall I talked about. So we actually have to go up and over, and we drop down the back side of the building, ultimately making our way to the main electrical room. Next. So the main electrical room is where all of the power comes into our school building. This is where we connect to the Con Edison grid. And this large blue system you see in front of you is called a distribution panel. So this panel controls the delivery of power within our school buildings. And ultimately, this will be where we interconnect our solar panel system, right? So we connect the solar energy that is now in alternating current, which is the usable form, into our distribution panel. So what we do is we consume the solar energy first. So we use the clean energy first on site to power our classrooms, reducing the amount of energy that we draw from the grid. And the energy that we typically receive from the grid is in the form of power that was generated using the burning of fossil fuels. So the clean energy that we produce with solar is reducing the number of fossil fuels that we need to burn at our schools. Not at our schools, in order to power our schools. Sorry, next please.
Hey, Christine, giving you the 2-minute heads up.
Yep, perfect, thank you. So ultimately, we are using clean energy received from the sun to power our schools. Next. So that is like a typical overview of what a solar installation project looks like. The largest part of construction on these projects that I overviewed today typically takes 8 to 10 weeks in construction. which honestly is pretty quick when you think about how big the impact of these solar installations really is on the air quality and quality of life that we have in our schools, our communities, and our solar. In our schools and our city. And I want to thank you very much for listening. And I also want to put a plug out there for those of you who are listening, so that are, like either teachers or students, is to encourage either you as a teacher or students, you encourage your teachers to participate in our NYC Solar Schools education program, which is a program that we deliver with Solar One that really links these installations to the classroom and makes them a tool for educating you further on clean energy and the benefits of these very exciting projects. So that's it. Thank you so much. And we have some time for questions.
Yep, there's several questions came in, so we can't get into all of them, unfortunately, but a couple ones that popped up multiple times. How can a school apply? If they meet all the requirements, how can they get solar panels?
So I will tell you that myself and Jenna Barrett, who's our solar projects coordinator, are diligently reviewing all of the schools. So we typically know if your school is solar ready, but we want to hear from you. And we have an email, NYC Solar Schools at sustain. Well, you know what? We'll send that out there. Jenna, maybe you can type it into the box so everybody can see that email address. You can contact us, or my contact information is available too. You can email me directly and I will be your link to figuring out when we can do a solar project at your school.
Christine, how does weather affect the panels?
So one of the big surprises related to solar is that solar operates even on cloudy days. So yes, we have really good generation on sunny days, but we have generation on cloudy days. We have generation on days that it's snowing. I had mentioned earlier that the solar panels are installed at a small tilt, and that tilt actually allows the snow to slide off, and they generate all year round. So we see really good energy production in the winter. In fact, one of the secrets is that solar actually operates better in cooler weather because there's less resistance in the wiring. So we've got really good solar generation opportunity year round.
How long does it take to install the panels on a school?
So I mentioned that in the last piece of my presentation. So the bulk of construction usually takes 8 to 10 weeks. So that's like 2 to 2.5 months, which is really quite a fast process.
And what would you say is the average cost? Do you know that information?
I do. Well, you know what, honestly, it really depends on the size of your school. So that's really going to vary over the course of calculating how much solar we can install on your school. So it's hard to tell you what that number is up front, but I will tell you that the city has an established program and established funding for solar. So it is not a matter of the schools needing to raise money for solar. It's a matter of identifying the sites, getting it under contract, and working with DCAS, the Department of Citywide Administrative Services, that has the money for these installations to make them happen. So funding is in place, so schools do not need to figure out how much money to collect for these projects. Okay.
And are students still able to apply for internships, or is that on pause right now?
So they can, and that is, so the internships are actually through our career and technical education program. So it's for CTE high school students. So it is limited to students that are specifically on electrical, construction, or engineering tracks in our CTE program. So it's not open to every student, but if you're a student that is interested, you should keep that on your radar as a potential opportunity.
All right, I think that's all we have time for now, but again, we'll share this presentation and all of our contact information.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Christine. Thanks so much. And I just wanted to say really fast, since we're all at home, I went and grabbed my hair dryer. And just so everybody at home, if you look at one of your appliances, Christine was talking about the different types of currents. So I've tried to find it on here, and if you look at an appliance at the actual plug, you'll see like the hertz, the volts, and it'll say AC. So if you ever actually looked at one of these things, which maybe you haven't, you'll see that AC on there, and that stands for that alternating current, which is what Christine was talking about. We have to get the direct current to alternating current. So kind of grounds it for everybody. Also really wanted to reiterate our awesome partners at Solar One. The education program is phenomenal, and it would not be possible without Solar One. So thank you guys. If you're out there, a lot of you might have worked with Solar One. They're a very memorable team. So thank you to you guys. Up next, we are really, really excited to have a guest speaker. So just so everybody knows, we work a lot with Columbia University and other universities in the city. And we did a kind of a last minute call to see if anybody, any researchers, any people actively working in the field of sustainability, earth and environmental science, just across a smattering of topics and interests. We wanted to see if anybody was interested, any professional working in the field was interested in speaking with our New York City students and teachers. And we had a lot of people who were willing to give their time to speak with everybody today. And so we're really, really happy to have Clara Chang, who is a PhD student at Columbia University working in the Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory, which is, again, it's at the Earth Institute, which is a world-renowned institution. So Clara is going to be speaking to you about her research, but I just wanted to say it's Earth Day. To us, every day is Earth Day. This work is becoming increasingly important as we're really talking about, the environment and all the impacts of, that humanity really has on it. And so this stuff is really, really important and also very, very interesting. So Clara, thank you so much for being here.
Hi, happy Earth Day, everyone. So today I wanted to just say hi and tell you a beautiful story about the Earth and what I think about every day. Can we go to the next slide, please? So first, a little about me. Thank you for the lovely introduction. So I am a second-year PhD student at Columbia University. As he said, I work at the Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory. So my lab is actually up in Rockland County, and I go there every day. Before graduate school, I actually spent 3 years working full-time as a technician at the Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory. So I worked in this beautiful, crazy place you see here with all the white shelves. And that is one of the world's biggest libraries of mud in the world. So we were essentially a lending library. If you wanted 50-million-year-old mud from the bottom of the Pacific Ocean to do your research on, we got you covered. We would sample some mud and send it off to you. After 3 years of working in this beautiful mud library, I decided it was time to start my own research. And so I began working towards my PhD, where I am studying the long time scale history and climate of the Earth. Next slide, please. So I wanted to tell you a story today about the Sahara Desert. So as we know, the Sahara Desert is in the north of Africa. Next slide, please. And it is very dry and hot, and there's not a lot of vegetation there. There's not a lot of plants. There's not a lot of animals that can live there. Next slide, please. However, in the Sahara Desert, there are actually these cave paintings. So this is in Egypt, and there are these cave paintings of people swimming, and there are, evidence that people were spending time in the water, and there are paleontological evidence of giraffes and of cattle. Next slide, please. And so from this evidence, researchers are realizing that when these cave paintings were drawn, that the Sahara Desert was a grassland, or more like a prairie. And so we know that these paintings are about 7,000 to 10,000 years old. And so therefore we know that, that it was wet and grassy around 7,000 years ago in the Sahara Desert. Next slide, please. So researchers began thinking. They said, okay, we know that there's lots and lots of rain now in the Sahara 10,000 years ago. We know that the Nile River flows to the Sahara Desert and it flows into the Mediterranean Sea. And next slide, please. And we know that the Mediterranean Sea usually has oxygen that reaches, parts of the bottom of the basin. Next slide, please. However, we can predict that when you have a lot of water coming from the Nile River going into the Mediterranean, it causes this very, very interesting process to happen, where you have fresh water on the top of the Mediterranean, and that doesn't let circulation on the bottom of the water. So this is essentially like you took the bubbler out of your fish tank, right? It would get super gross. You would have things that are dying. You would have scummy buildup on the bottom. It would probably start to smell weird. And we would predict that if you added a bunch of fresh water at once from the Nile into the Mediterranean, you should get this black, scummy stuff that would form on the bottom. So now we have a hypothesis to investigate. We hypothesized that if it was green and wet in the Sahara Desert, like the cave paintings suggest, then at the same time period, the Mediterranean should have a black, scummy layer on the bottom of the basin. Next slide, please. And so researchers went out to test this hypothesis. So they sent this big drill ship out into the Mediterranean and took what's called a sediment core. So they took a big PVC pipe, dropped it over to the side of the ship, and then brought it up full of mud. And then when you cut the pipe in half, you're able to see the record of mud in the Mediterranean. So just for some context, the average sedimentation rate in the ocean is about 1 centimeter per 1,000 years. So if you have a tube of mud and 1 centimeter gives you 1,000 years of history, you can go back a really, really long time period from looking at the mud, as each year records different events in Earth's history. Next slide, please. And so this is what they found when they cored the Mediterranean. So they saw it was beautiful. 10,000 years ago, they saw that black, mucky stuff that they expected to see, except it kept on going. 10,000 years ago there's the black mucky layer, but then you can see 30,000 years ago, 50,000 years ago, 70,000 years ago. Next slide, please. So why would this be? Why are you getting these periodic changes in climate in the Earth? It turns out that the answer lies in the stars. So today, the North Star is Polaris, right? It's the star that is the only one that doesn't move in the sky. However, it turns out that 10,000 years ago, the North Star was Vega. It was a different star, and that's because the Earth itself changes the position of its orbit through time. Next slide, please. And so this is what a guy named Lutin Milenkovic figured out. When he was a prisoner of war, he came up with these calculations, I think, when he was in confinement. So you can have these precessional cycles. That's the one I was just telling you about. That's the one in which the Earth changes direction over time, and that can make climate change every 20,000-ish years. But you also have other influences. For example, there's eccentricity. That's the shape of the Earth's orbit through time. And the orbit also changes, but that changes climate every 100,000 years-ish. You also have something called obliquity. And so that's the amount of Earth's tilt over time. And that changes climate every 41,000 years. So these astronomical influences create this beat, this change, this massive regulatory system that influences how much sun the Earth is getting through time. Next slide, please. And so here are the influences of how much sun that the Earth is getting based on those three processes I told you about. Next slide, please. And so researchers over the last few years have been trying to figure out what big things in history and science and Earth are actually being influenced by these changes. Here's one paper that came out in 2014 that showed that human evolution appears to have been regulated by these changes. So we can see that the migrations in Africa and the appearance of different hominin species has something to do with the 100,000-year cycle. Next slide, please. There's been a really cool overlap of science and history, for example. So a paper in 2008 looked at the dynasties in China, and they compared it to that 20,000-year cycle that I was telling you about, having to do with the rain belt moving around the Earth. And they found that, you know, when the climate changes, that changes crop yields, that can lead to political instability. And they showed that the dynasties in China, the Tang, the Song, the Ming, the Qing, those appeared to have changed with the 20,000-year-old cycle of the Earth. Next slide, please. Maybe some of you know about the ice ages too. For instance, New York City used to be covered in a mile of ice. The ice was a mile thick. And we know that actually because if you go to Central Park, there are scratches in the rocks. There's grooves that could only have been cut by a mile thick of ice. And so we've been trying to figure out how many ice ages were there, what controlled them coming and going. Next slide, please. And so measurements of factors in the Earth that are affected by ice show that these climate beats, these orbital signatures, also seem to have affected the ice ages. Next slide, please. And so finally, a little about my own research. I've been looking at these rocks in New Jersey. So that's called the Newark Basin. It was named after Newark, New Jersey. And this was a lake in the middle of Pangaea when all the continents were together. And so this giant lake, it was about 20 degrees latitude, was there from about 200 to 230 million years ago. Next slide, please. And so actually, when the lake dried up, it turned to rock, there was heat, there was pressure, and it actually preserved as these lake sediments. They preserved as rock in New Jersey and Pennsylvania and all across the Northeast. And in these rocks, you can see those black layers. And we know that those happened every 20,000 years, just like the Mediterranean. Every 20,000 years, it got wet and there was a black layer that deposited, and you can see the effect of all the orbital cycles through time 200 million years ago. Next slide, please. So just for some context, this time period was the dawn of the dinosaurs, right? There were no people yet, but there are also no T-Rexes yet. The great-great-great-grand ancestors of the T-Rexes were just evolving. So we're learning a lot now about the effect of these orbital cycles on animals, on how it's shaped the evolution of the Earth. We're trying to figure out how these orbital cycles, these natural systems, interact with other systems going on in climate, whether that's climate change, right? So how does how do these long timescale things affect the carbon dioxide on the planet? How do they interact with each other? And how do they affect the animals? How do extinctions line up with these grand planetary mechanisms? And so that's an active area of research. There's a lot that we don't know, and there's a lot of cool questions left to be answered for any students who are interested in pursuing them. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to say thank you for everybody listening to me. I'm happy to take any questions you want, not just about the presentation, but about what it's like to be a scientist. What do I do all day? How do you get into science? How do you do all these tests, and where do you go? And you can feel free to always email me with any questions. I think they'll be giving you my email. Thanks.
Thanks, Clara. We do have a couple questions that have come through. What was the oldest discovery you ever found?
That's a great question. So the rocks that I'm working with are about 200 million years. And my favorite discovery was actually made by one of my friends who found this like really strange tooth in a rock, and we had to figure out what it was, and we found out it was a shark tooth. And we actually found a shark egg, which was wild because, well, sharks have been around for a very long time, but this was wild because it was a lake in the North Pole. And so that meant that there were North Pole lake sharks 200 million years ago. And we've been trying to figure out what the biology and stuff of those weird critters were. So that's my favoriteest and oldest discovery.
Great. Can people come and get mud from the observatory?
Yeah, so that's a really good point. If you are a teacher, especially, or a student interested in visiting the observatory, let me know. We have an open house that we have about 4,000 people come visit every year. It's a lot of people. I don't know when we'll begin again, but we'll have a lot of visitors, and at that event you can usually get some mud, but we also send microfossils and mud to teachers who are interested in teaching with the mud. And if you are a student with a project, you can actually go online, look at all the mud we have, and write up a little description of what you're planning to do with that mud, and we can mail it to you for free, as long as it's like a legitimate scientific project.
Similar question, can students visit the mud library as a field trip?
Yeah, totally. So we, if you look us up online, you can find the education coordinator's address online, or you can also email me if you have trouble finding it, but we arrange class field trips. When I worked at the mud library, we had classes of kids come probably several times a month, usually like 5th grade to 12th grade, and then also college classes.
Thank you. A couple questions came through about your process, like how you got here, what you went to college for, any recommendations for students who are looking to explore similar work?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I went to Barnard College here in New York City, and I graduated in 2015. My degree was in environmental science, and when I was in college, I found it, when I was in high school is when I started. I was really interested in learning about the Earth, so I emailed a lot of people and actually emailed a jellyfish scientist and then worked with a jellyfish scientist studying jellyfish behavior for a few years. And really that piqued my interest in earth science. And so once I got to college, I knew that if you just email a scientist and say, hey, I read something that you wrote, I'm really, really interested in it. Can I come see your lab? Can I volunteer? Can I help you out with anything? I was really lucky that in college somebody let me help them for a while. And then after I graduated college, because I had had enough experience working in a lab and stuff, I was able to get the job in the mud library. In general, there's a lot of really cool internship programs for high school students and for college students out there. And if you'd like to know more about getting an internship in earth science, you can definitely email me, and I can definitely send you the way of people who know more than I do.
Thanks. And how did you, throughout the years, how are the different years measured? Like what technology is used?
Right, so there's a lot of different technology to figure out how old something is and when something happened. Usually that's sort of the first thing that we do when we get a tube of mud. We want to figure out when all the layers of mud were deposited, because that helps us a lot with our story. So for example, there's radiocarbon dating, which you might know about, where you have to find some kind of organic material and that'll tell you how old it is, but that doesn't go back very far at all. It doesn't go into the millions of years, really. So then you need radiometric dating. So there are crystals called zircons, and those can you can chemically date them with uranium and lead to figure out in the millions of years. So there's all kinds of chemical methods. And then if you're not using those methods, you can also look at the fossils that are present. So often it's like very tiny microfossils that were the shells of plankton that died and floated to the bottom, or bigger fossils, or pollen that has fallen into it. And then because we know what organisms lived when, sort of, we're able to figure out how old the mud is based on which fossils are there. Thanks.
Cool. I think we have time for one or two more. How do you keep track of all of the information and data?
I think that's a really good question, and that's always a challenge. I mean, so first order, keeping track of samples is really hard, right? So my lab looks like thousands and thousands and thousands of vials of mud and fossils. And so really having a very good labeling system is important. Just being really methodical, taking lots of pictures of everything I do so I can just look back and say, what was that fossil again? And also just, keeping really good notes in lab notebooks and keeping good data spreadsheets in Excel is really helpful. Thanks.
Great.
All right. Clara, thank you so much. You mentioned two of my personal favorite animals, sharks and jellyfish. So I think it's amazing. And if you did not know before that there not only are there mud libraries in existence, but that you have one, at least one, here in New York City. So in your backyard, you've got people studying this really, really interesting stuff. And you see how relevant it really is. And Clara, we just want to say thanks again for spending your Earth Day with us. We really, really appreciate it and can't wait to see you again. So
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much. Last but definitely not least, we've got Jaxie Friedman. Jaxie is also with the Office of Sustainability. She is a sustainability specialist, but something that Jaxie has really been amazing in is helping to create and really run our youth leadership committee. So we started this last year. Jaxie is joined by 3 members of our youth leadership group, which we're really happy to have you all. Amina, Isabel, and Anna, thank you guys so much for being here. You are now going to be introduced into the mix. But again, this is our youth leadership committee run by Jaxie Friedman. Jaxie, go.
Hi, everyone. Can you all hear me? I think we're good to go. It's so good to be here with all of you. Welcome to the last and final session of Keeping Sustainability Alive Inside Live. So in this session, as Meredith was saying, thank you so much for that introduction. We're going to be doing a Q&A with 3 student sustainability leaders. Just a quick overview of what the session is going to include. We're going to start off with some sustainability trivia. And that's actually to test your knowledge on sustainability. And then we're going to move into a Q&A about high school sustainability action. Some housekeeping items. Some of you guys who've been here from the very beginning of the session, you may already know about the Q&A. This particular part of the presentation, we're trying to have be really interactive. So you'll need to be utilizing the Q&A throughout the session. If you don't know where that is, you'll see 2 overlapping word bubbles with one of them has a question mark in it. It should be either in the center or right side of your screen. You'll want to pull that up right now to make sure that you can submit things as we're asking you questions. And please make sure to write your name in. You'll see when you type your, once you go into the Q&A, there'll be a space for you to type your questions in. Above that box, there should be a space to type your name. Make sure to write that in. That way we can give you credit when it's due and when you get the answers right. Otherwise, it'll come through as anonymous. So let's test out the Q&A now. Submit to us saying, what's your name? Where are you coming from? What school are you with? What role are you in? Are you a student or a staff member? We'd love to hear from you. We want to know who's in the audience. So open up the Q&A and submit those now. As we're waiting for some of that stuff to trickle in, Thad, we can go to the next slide. I want to introduce who's going to be leading this presentation. So Meredith already spoke a little bit about our Youth Leadership Council. I'm Jaxie Friedman. As Meredith was saying, am one of the leaders of the Youth Leadership Council, along with my colleague, Jenna Barent. We're really privileged to be working with such amazing students. The DOE Sustainability Youth Leadership Council is made up of about 30 students coming from all over the city who are taking sustainability action seriously and wanting to really kind of pioneer the way for the schools in New York City. So today I'm going to be joined by 3 YLC representatives. We have Isabel Sanderson, a student from Stuyvesant High School. She's an 11th grader, age 16. We have another student from Stuyvesant, Anna Kathwala. She's a 9th grader, age 14. And last but not least, Amina Castronovo. She is coming from Beacon High School, and she's a 10th grader, age 15. You can see in the image on this slide, Isabel and Amina. Those are 2 of our students who are going to be joining us today, and they're in this image at our Youth Climate Summit. Here they're helping to facilitate at a workshop. So our Youth Climate Summit is something that our office organizes every year. We had our 2nd one this year, and our Youth Leadership Council plays a really pivotal role in organizing that event and really weaving in student voice into what that day looks like, and how the day is going to run throughout the day. So to kick things off, we're going to be starting with some sustainability trivia. So how this is going to work, we're going to be asking you a series of questions, and you're going to type your answers in the Q&A. You'll have 20 to 30 seconds to get those answers in, and we'll be announcing who gets the answers right, who gets their answers in first. We'll have to play around with it. We're still getting used to this platform, so the trickle in of the information might be a little slow, so just work with us. But make sure to have your Q&A open so you can quickly respond. Yeah, we're excited to see what you guys know. I'm going to pass things over to Isabel Sanderson, who will lead us through this trivia.
Okay, hi guys. So we're going to start with a quick question. If anyone can guess, what year did Earth Day become a global event? And you have less than 20 seconds now, but just remember to put your answers in the Q&A.
All right, our time is up.
Okay, so it was 1970. I don't know if anyone got that, but that would make this the 50th anniversary of Earth Day, which is really exciting.
And it looks like a few people did submit some answers in, so congrats to Allie, Camilla, Nori, and a few others.
Okay, so our next question is how many students attended the New York City Youth Climate Strike on September 20th in 2019? You have 20 seconds.
Five seconds left. Time is up.
Okay, so I don't know. Okay, but anyway, it was over 60,000 students, which is very.
Yuritsa, you were pretty close with 50,000.
All right, one of our last questions is what celebrity made the documentary Before the Flood about climate change?
Five, four, three, two, one. Time's up.
Okay, so it was Leonardo DiCaprio.
Anna got that one. And we're still waiting for some other answers to trickle in. Miss K also got it. And Josie and Ivy too.
Okay, so for one of our last questions, how many United Nations Sustainable Development Goals are there? And for extra credit, do you think you can name one?
Five more seconds. Time's up.
Okay, congratulations to Carol, who got 17. I don't know if anyone else did. But anyway, you can look to the list to the left. Some examples of these goals are like number 1, no poverty, number 2, which is no food hunger, no food insecurity, and stuff like this. And they're really helpful when making sustainable developments.
Awesome, thanks, Isabel. So next up, we're going to be switching gears a little, so that now it's not going to be you guys answering the questions, it's going to be our Youth Leadership Council members. So Make sure to submit your questions for these student sustainability leaders in the Q&A, just like you guys have been with this sustainability trivia. We're going to start off with a few pre-populated questions, but we want to save the majority of our time to actually answer questions from the audience. So make sure to submit some questions. Yeah, so let's get started. For our first question, we have what sustainability projects do you work on inside and outside of school? Amina, we'll have you answer first.
Okay, hi everybody. Thanks for joining us. So inside of school, I'm part of my school's green team, and we are working on making sure that students and staff are recycling well and composting, because that is a big issue at my school. We're also working on trying to incorporate greener curriculum into teachers' lessons. So next year we're going to try and see if teachers will introduce some strategies and some lessons into their own classes, so that kids can start to kind of realize what's happening and what they can do to help. Outside of school, I do a lot of lobbying. So you can see on the far left picture and the middle picture, I am lobbying with the representatives. On the far left was when I went to Albany last January with New York Renews, and we went and talked to different senators to support our legislation. And in the middle, that is me and my high school green team with Senator Kavanaugh, and we were meeting with him to discuss to support legislation, and hopefully we'll get this passed.
Awesome. Thanks, Amina. Can you talk a little more about the green curriculum and how exactly you guys are working with teachers to try to get that implemented, and what other students are involved?
Yeah, so this is a pretty new idea, so I don't have too many details yet, but we are hoping to send out an email to all the teachers and tell them, if we can give you resources and a lesson plan, would you be willing to incorporate it? And also asking them if they would be willing to have mini gardens in their classrooms, because I think a big problem with city students is that we don't really have access to, you know, nature in general, so we kind of lose contact with that. So kind of trying to introduce that to kids and giving them the capacity to make a connection with nature, I think will definitely make people care more about potentially losing that in the future.
Yeah, for sure. And Amina, are you working on that with a green team, or can you just tell us a little more about that?
Yeah, with my school, our green team is working on that. Yeah, we have a fair number of kids, and this year we've been trying to have meetings with other clubs to kind of show the connection. Like, for example, we had a meeting with Black Student Union to kind of show how racial inequality connects to the climate crisis, and to kind of try and get more people involved, depending on their interest.
I love that. I think that finding connections to other student groups is so important in terms of getting more people involved and connecting people. Awesome. And now we're going to move on to Anna. Can you give us your answer to this question? So what kind of sustainability projects do you work on inside and outside of school? Anna, you may have to unmute.
Sorry about that. Hi everyone. So actually Isabel who led the Q&A, and I have been working together to get our school to reduce the number of pages that are allowed to be printed every week, to reduce the amount of paper waste coming out of our school. And we've been doing that. We actually were only just starting when schools got closed, and now obviously we have no control over how much teachers print or students print because we're not at school. But we were working on reaching out to the principal and the sustainability coordinator at our school to try to decrease the amount of pages teachers are allowed to print at school. And outside of school, I have organized a climate strike at my old school in like cooperation with the big ones that have been going on. And I've attended climate strikes as well. And I'm also working on a TerraCycle initiation program with getting TerraCycle into all New York City public schools.
Awesome. And Thad, can you switch slides just so we can reference some of the photos? Can you tell us a little bit about some of the photos that we have up here?
Yeah, so on the far left, that's me at the Youth Climate Summit, which as part of the Youth Leadership Council, I helped organize, and I was part of, and I was speaking about the activity that we were going to do that day. And then on the far right, that's at the climate strike in this September, where we marched down to Battery Park in protest of climate inaction. Yeah.
Love that. Anything more you want to share about any of those efforts in particular?
Not specifically, no.
Has it been challenging getting people to do the paper reduction? I know it can be hard to break that habit.
Yeah, it's been hard to just even to find someone who will listen to our ideas. Like, it's just hard to communicate because, I mean, teachers are very busy and so are principals, and it just takes a lot of communication.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
All right, great. Well, we're going to move on to the next question, but Anna, we'll have you answer first this time. So how can students continue sustainability work while in isolation due to COVID-19? And if you could share a little bit about what you specifically are doing right now. I think a lot of people are unsure of how they can meet with green teams virtually, how they can still take action when they're not in their school.
Yeah, I think it is a really hard time to feel like you're doing something useful because the whole world is sort of on pause and it's hard to do things when no one else is doing anything. But I especially with my group who's working on the TerraCycle project, we've been doing a lot of planning and just making steps and processes to help prepare for when things open up again and we can actually do work. So I think thinking about a goal that you want to accomplish, a sustainability goal, even if it's just like if not using plastic bags anymore, make a plan for how you're going to do that when the coronavirus is over.
I think that planning component is so important. I know in the workshop that we led at the Youth Climate Summit, that was such a key component about thinking about how we can come up with realistic goals and plans about how they can actually be implemented. Can you share a little bit more about your TerraCycle project, what TerraCycle is, and kind of some strategies you've been using with that implementation to implement a successful plan?
Yeah, sure. So TerraCycle is an organization. I'm sure some of you have heard of it. And you sign up and you can recycle things that usually get sent to landfills. So it's a program that takes things like snack bar wrappers and markers and toothpaste tubes, and it recycles them and makes them into new products instead of them being thrown into a landfill. And so while we've all been in quarantine, my group and I have just been working on making a document that has things that we want to accomplish, and we've been working on doing things virtually and just trying to build support while we can't actually be in school.
Yeah, that's great. And Amina, how about you? Do you have any suggestions for how students can continue to do this work while in isolation?
Yep, so a big thing that I've been doing is having virtual lobby meetings. So I'm part of an organization called New York Youth Climate Leaders, which I suggest that any youth who want to become part of this sign up for, and also Our Climate. Those are both great platforms where you can start lobbying. So what we've been doing is yesterday we had a statewide day of lobbying where different groups contacted different assembly members and scheduled appointments with them. So yesterday, my lobby team had an appointment with Assemblywoman Deborah Glick, and we asked her to support legislation. So like having virtual meetings and also writing letters to the editors and op-eds. A lot of newspapers right now aren't publishing articles that are specifically about the climate crisis, but if you can find a way to connect it to the coronavirus or talking about how the reduce of fossil fuels has made the air healthier, how that connects would also be really helpful for people to read. more for your schools, I think right now is a great time to be planning for next year. You can have virtual meetings with your club. You can write letters to teachers, to staff, asking them if certain ideas that you have could take place next year. Yeah, so I think right now is a great time to be planning for next year. And since you have a lot of time on your hands, I would really suggest that you start to think about what you can do next year to help make your school more sustainable.
Awesome. So many amazing suggestions for both you guys. So now we're going to open things up for some audience questions. Thank you to everybody who's been submitting. There's been a lot of really wonderful questions coming in. We'll start off, and Anna and Amina, you guys can just volunteer if somebody has an answer. What sparked your interest in becoming a sustainability leader? That's coming from Ali Raza.
I can answer that. I've always been really interested in sustainability, and I actually found out about this program through my school, and I've been thinking about it for a long time, how I wanted to make a difference, and how I wanted to change things, and I figured that this would be a good way to get started, and to actually do something. Yeah.
Love that.
Adding on to Anna, I think the climate crisis is something that feels very overwhelming and kind of out of our hands. And I've always felt like I wanted to help, but that I was kind of hopeless. But so I think, joining groups and actually taking action and doing something makes you feel a lot better, and it makes you feel like you kind of have a say and have a voice in what's happening.
Yeah, that's great. So some other questions coming in, going off of that point, Amina, and that kind of like climate anxiety. What do you guys see as the biggest threat to our climate?
I think that, I don't know, some people they don't seem to care as much, or they aren't educated enough, which is partially like our school system's fault. I think that if we educated students more, especially when they're younger, so that they have those sustainable skills and that mindset, it would be a lot better, because we have the technology and we have all of the plans right now to transition to a more sustainable society, but because we're uneducated and because it's a scary thought about what could happen in the future, and to completely transition from fossil fuels, I think is what's really standing in our way right now.
Definitely.
Yeah, sort of building off of you, Amina, I think it's also a lot of people's unwillingness sort of to make changes to their own lives, probably mostly because they think that just one person doing something won't change anything. But I think the mentality should be changed to, if everyone does something little, like if you just don't buy processed meats for if you don't eat meat for 1 day a week, or you don't take a half an hour shower, you take a 5-minute shower, things will start to change, and it just takes everyone working together to do that. And I think why things aren't changing is because people are unwilling or scared or just resistant to doing that, and I think changing that would change a lot.
Yeah, I think it definitely starts with small actions. On that note, and kind of expanding from our individual actions and into our community, we have some questions coming in talking about, has now being at home influenced how you're relating to your families and encouraging more sustainable practices at home, and how do you talk about these things with your family?
Well, now since quarantine happened, my family actually just moved, so we've been ordering a lot more from Amazon, which is not the best way to limit your sustainable, your sustainability. But I've definitely been encouraging my whole family to take shorter showers and to source our foods from places that we know are organic and don't and local, instead of having food travel from a long way away. I think that's the main thing that I've been doing.
Yeah, I think that being in quarantine has definitely caused people to, buy tons of things and then to consume more, and kind of being inside all the time makes you realize like how much waste you do produce every day. And I still think that's a really hard thing to kind of wrap your mind around and figure out what to do, because our society is based off of like all of this plastic waste, and it's kind of hard to transition off of that. And I'm still trying to figure out how to do that. But you know, like keeping in touch with your environmental club and you know, reading articles and things like that, and going outside if you can for just like a little bit, can really make a difference and help you figure out what you should do.
Awesome. And one kind of two-part question, this will be our last one. Some people were wondering, how do you engage with students and staff to get them more involved in this work? And then as a second part to that question, what can adults do to help support students in this action?
Well, I would say, like, for me, the main thing that adults can do is to just like listen and to be open to implementing students' ideas, because I think that students do have a lot of really good ideas that really would change things. And I think that when adults can actually help, because adults have more power in the world or in making big decisions than kids do. And I think if adults can be a part of making kids' ideas come true, then that would change a lot.
Yeah, I think, again, I wish that like adults and teachers would incorporate more sustainable lessons into their lesson plan, and I wish that we would just learn more about that. I wish that school staffs could kind of help students think of ways that the school could be more sustainable. I know there's already so much that schools do, but I wish that there could be more of a conversation between students and staff so that they could really start to incorporate sustainable practices. And adding on to Anna, I think that students do have a lot of good ideas. I think that we're not really given the space to think about those things. And if they really want to have that space, they have to go find it for themselves. So I wish it was more of like a general thing that everyone was expected to do.
Awesome, thank you guys. I think that was a great final point, and kind of speaks to a lot of the work that our Youth Leadership Council tries to do in general. I know that we really believe that the students have some of the best ideas, and that we really want your voices to be heard. That's part of why you guys are here on this call today. It's why we meet every month to try to see how we can implement the things that you guys are talking about in each school, and then how to try to incorporate them into the DOE as a whole. Before we wrap things up, we actually want to ask a question of the audience. That if you can go to the next slide for us. We just want you guys to respond in the Q&A. We're not going to have time to really announce these, but please respond. And if you feel comfortable, even add your email address in there so we can respond to you directly. So the question is, how can the DOE Sustainability Youth Leadership Council, so that's the 30 students that we're working together on this work, how can we all support your work? What do you need from us? We want to help you. So respond in the Q&A. Again, if you feel comfortable, include your email address so we can respond to you directly, or you can email us separately and we can respond to you after the event. I just want to give a big thank you to the three of you for your amazing efforts in developing this presentation and throughout the year. You guys were really so impressive with the work that you're doing in your schools, outside of your schools, and then with our Youth Leadership Council and our meetings all the time. You really inspire me and make me feel like there's a lot of hope for the future. So thank you guys. And if you could bring us to our last slide. So you guys can see in this photo, this is our entire Youth Leadership Council. If anybody's interested in getting involved, stay tuned into our newsletter. We'll be sharing with you guys when the application is opening for next year. Our Youth Leadership Council is so important in getting the work done that we need to do in New York City schools. Students have such amazing ideas. And I just want to give a big thank you to the entire group, not just the 3 representatives on the call today, whether it was doing some of the behind the scenes brainstorming for this presentation or just kind of supporting in the independent work you're doing in your group projects. I'm always so proud of you guys and so grateful to have the privilege of working with you. Thank you for joining us in this session. If you want to stay connected to our work, please check out our social media platforms. You can follow the DOE Sustainability Youth Leadership Council on Instagram and Twitter. Our handle is @YouthNYCSustain. So you can see that up on the screen, and we have a little logo, which is the green and yellow text that you guys can see up on the screen. Thanks to everyone who came and participated in this Keeping Sustainability Alive Inside live session. We're so happy to be able to speak with you guys. And I'll pass things back to Thad, who's going to wrap things up for the day. Happy Earth Day, everyone.
Thanks, Jaxie. It's Meredith. Thad is gonna get on in 2 seconds. Just wanted to underscore the big thank you to Isabel, Anna, and Amina, but also our entire Youth Leadership Council. We love working with you, and you guys are basically like part of the sustainability family at DOE. So thank you. We're really, really proud to work with you. Also, a big, big thank you to Jaxie and Jenna. You guys do a wonderful job with the YLC. Thank you to all of our presenters. Thad is going to wrap it up now. You've been hearing his voice throughout. I also want to say thank you to Thad for all of his hard work on this. So Thad, thank you, and let your presence be known.
Hey everyone, just want to say hello from the control tower behind the scenes. Really appreciate you all joining us in our first virtual live event. It's a big leap for our office. We know so many organizations right now like ours are also making the jump to virtual. It's been a fun ride, and we hope it's been as valuable and fun for you as it has been for us to create it. So thank you. I wanted to leave you with a few parting pieces of information. One is, just like the Youth Leadership Council has an Instagram, so does our office. So please follow us on there at NYC School Sustainability. We'd also love it if you could share a little bit of feedback with us about the day. As we progress into this new world, we want to improve. So we'd appreciate it. We have a 2-minute survey. It's bit.ly/sustain live. That's a capital S, S-U-T, capital L, L-I-V-E. We appreciate that. We'll also follow up in an email. And the last thing I wanted to promote is we're going to try to do this again, actually 3 more times. So please join us the first time on Friday, May 1st. We're going to go a little further with these experts and scientists through our connections at Columbia and other higher ed institutions in our city and around the area. But on May 1st, we have 3 topics already lined up. We'll be taking a virtual field trip to a glacial ice field in Alaska. We'll be learning about invasive amphibious fishes, how they work, why and where. And then we also will be learning about weather, from cloud atlases to climate change, and also the process of writing a book about weather. So excited for that content. This is the first in what we're calling a Meet the Experts series, Friday, May 1st. Join us back at 1 p.m. We're also doing another one on May 15th and May 29th. So we'll be promoting that starting tomorrow with the full lineup, and we look forward to seeing you virtually until we can see you again in person. It's really been a pleasure to be able to do this with you all, and we hope you have enjoyed it. Thank you. Take care.
Happy Earth Day.
Happy Earth Day.